2 of the Lil Durk trial, the full-blown trial. So we're still on jury selection. We're currently going through some very, very interesting situations with jury selection. And it's been a wild day, okay? The judge has admonished the Free Durk fans that were showing support in the courtroom. He's very, very upset about some of the Free Durk movement that's been going on. There is apparently a racist...
Yo, I don't know why people be doing that. Like, that they did that with YNW Melly on trial. Like, that can cause so many issues. Y'all got to chill. It's cool to be fans. Y'all got to chill, though. Like, I don't know why people be doing that.
Juror who basically says that the defendants look like they would have done it. It's insane, okay? It's been an absolutely wild day. So I'm going to take you through absolutely everything that I've heard so far in this half-day break, and then I'm probably going to come back again this afternoon and give you another full update on everything else that has gone on. But it was absolutely just raucous in there today, okay? So the judge continued the jury selection process. The juries have had their opportunity to take the questionnaire home. They've answered the questionnaire. They've kind of got to the bottom of, all of the questions and stuff like that were being asked. And straight from the get-go, the judge was pissed. He said, I heard about these Free Durk cards that have been handed out. I've shown you guys these before. There were these Free Durk kind of like little postcards that were being handed out, okay? Now, these basically were very controversial. Now, I'm not going to lie, I didn't even think about it at the time. That's the sort of thing that I would usually think of, like, wait a minute, is that allowed? I didn't even think about it at the time. I took one of the cards, I showed it off in a previous video. I don't know if people think that I was snitching or something, but I just thought it was a normal thing. Someone gave me a Free Durk postcard, I showed it off, I said, hey, I was giving this in the courtroom. Well, apparently, I don't know if it was me, I don't know if it was someone else, but the judge got wind of that information and had admonished the people that distributed those Free Durk cards. I did speak to one of them earlier today. They said, look, I didn't realize I couldn't do that. And I'm thinking, okay, like, I guess now we all realize.
Why did they think they couldn't do that? Like, that's like tainting the jury pool. Like, you don't know who you passing out that card to. That was crazy.
I said you can't do that, okay? I don't have an opinion on it, but basically, they said that the judge said public opinion being disseminated is grossly improper. You can't do that in the courtroom. You can't canvass in the courtroom for the Free Durk movement at his trial. He is on trial. It's up to the judge and the jury. Well, it's up to the jury to decide if Durk is free, okay? So we got all types of little mini motorbikes flying around out here downtown. It's crazy today, right? There's a lot going on. But basically, okay, maybe they siding for Durk. But what we found out is the judge said, look, any kind of dissemination of that sort of information is grossly improper. He said, as Americans, and he always gives these little inspirational speeches, which I really appreciate, because he makes you understand. He doesn't just make a ruling or tell you what's going on and you think, oh, that's a load of bullshit. He explains why, in the context of like American culture and justice, why these things are important. And I really respect it. He said, as Americans, you can have your views. You can express them online. And if you think Durk should be free, you can do that. But what you can't do is lobby for a certain result in the courtroom or contact a juror or, disseminate leaflets and pamphlets and informations inside the courtroom to try and sway opinion. And when I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of not really allowed. This is supposed to be a free, open courtroom. And he said that this is a common sense requirement. And it was interesting because when I spoke to one of the people that put those leaflets out, respected them, I said, the judge said you weren't allowed to do that. They said, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that. And I was like, the judge said it was a common sense thing. So you might want to reflect on that. But anyway, like, no disrespect to them. I understand why they support Durk. I understand why the judge kind of made his opinion clear. You can't say you didn't know. Now we know. If that happens again, the judge says it's serious. He said you could be removed from the courtroom, banned from the courtroom, and you could even be prosecuted for contempt of court. So some of the Free Durk people, if you come out here with Free Durk to hand out, you might end up in jail. You might meet Durk. So you might want to be careful. And what's really crazy about that is that, I know that it was a requirement in the David hearings, for example. You couldn't come in David merch. You couldn't come with a free David shirt. That extends to your clothing. Now, look, the judge didn't mention that, but again, I'm just going to put this out to a warning. Anyone else out there, okay, so any of you folks that have thought of coming to the trial or are supporters that have been to the trial, you might want to use that common sense requirement and realize, I'm telling you guys, right, I don't know for sure, but you might get thrown out if you pull up in a Free Durk shirt. You might. I'm just saying you might. Common sense to me, my common sense would tell me that wearing a Free Durk shirt probably isn't a good idea, just like wearing a free David shirt.
Yeah, definitely not wearing no Free Durk shirt to the court. Like, that's crazy. You can't do nothing. You need to dress in proper clothing going to any courthouse, but you for sure don't do no Free Durk shirt. Now, I know that's crazy to say, but they'll let the family wear like rest in peace shirts of the victims and stuff, but you don't go in there wearing no doggone free anybody shirt to their trial. That's crazy.
We got told that any kind of slogan or protest clothing will get you ejected from the courtroom. So I can't lie, if I saw someone passing out free David postcards when I was in that David hearing, I might have crashed out. I'm joking, but like, you know what I'm saying? That's how I would have felt, because it would have been very, very, very disrespectful. And to be fair, the judge was very balanced, because he said, look, if Lil Pab's family was here handing out postcards saying convict Durk, Durk's cook, finish Durk, he said I'd say the exact same thing to them, and I would be willing to hold them in contempt of court. I would be willing to hold them in contempt of court too. So respect to him for saying that. Now, the judge basically went on to introduce the jury. He said, look, we're never going to use any names for the jurors. They're all just going to be referred to as numbers. Now, I'm not even going to use any of the numbers. I wrote down some of the numbers in my notes, but I'm not going to tell you any of the numbers. Not that that's going to identify them, but I just don't think it's important. I don't even want to accidentally... I'll be real. When I was in the hallway, I believe there were some jurors walking past. I literally turned away because I don't want to see the jurors. I don't want to know what's going on with the jurors or the potential jurors. If it gets to the point when the jury is selected and I see them in a courtroom, I can't help but see them in there. But like, some people are running out the courtroom to go and get eyes on the jury, and I'll be honest, I feel like that's kind of wrong. But if that's allowed in the courthouse, that's allowed in the courthouse. All right, people have been saying, "Oh, I think I saw this juror."
Nah, you gotta chill out with the jury, because then that can cause roadblocks for the trial. Okay, releasing jury information. Talking to leave the jury alone. Like, let them people do what they came to do and keep moving.
But I'm see no evil. I don't want to see the jurors. The judge said they're never going to be using any of the names of the jurors. He said that basically we're going to be discussing the questionnaires. They said that there are 3 jurors that both parties have already agreed to be dismissed, and they were numbered. They were given the number of those. The judge basically kind of worked out, what was the basis for those jurors not being allowed in. They said, who else do you think should be dismissed? Drew Findling gave his piece. He said that there was a specific juror that we agree we want dismissed. The judge said, all right, well, since both parties agree on this juror being dismissed, so we got to about 4 jurors that were dismissed at that point. The prosecution put forward 3 who they believe should be dismissed. The judge said, why is that? Is that because of who they are? He didn't say what specific requirements. Could have been their profession, could have been their background, could have been, I don't know what it was, but the prosecution said, yeah, basically their responses and their identities indicated that there could be a bias in this case. The judge said, all right, I understand why for one of these, 2 more require further examination. They might be able to serve if they can put certain things to the side, so their identity doesn't necessarily bar them completely from being a juror in this case. But they said that, the judge was like, yeah, cool, we can all agree. Other ones, he said, I want to talk about them some more. The prosecution brought up another person. They said that they basically had said that they made it clear that they wouldn't be willing to follow the law. They had views about the system that wouldn't necessarily disqualify them, but they basically said that they wouldn't necessarily follow the law if they felt like they kind of disagreed with what was going on. The judge went on to say, okay, cool, another juror that we probably, I'm happy to have excluded, basically would go on to basically make an exception, said that there was an issue with something to do with the evidence, the way that one of the jurors was going to interpret the evidence, he wasn't sure about. He said he's going to ask them a few questions, and depending on how they answer the questions, he might allow that person to be a juror. Now, Drew Findling was then given an opportunity. They said, okay, who are all the jurors that you guys don't think are qualified? And Drew was firing off numbers like it was the Powerball. I'm not going to lie, it was number. I'm not going to say the numbers, but he was like, no, this number. I'm going to say letters instead of numbers because they use numbers, but it was just like A, C, Z, what, a bunch of them, right? But they're numbers. You get what I'm saying. I'm keeping it secret. But the judge basically said, well, look, don't get your hopes up for all of that. That's a lot of people that you're trying to disqualify. But he said, look, that one, he said, this particular one, that's a big problem. I'm going to do a follow-up with them. I'm going to check if they can follow the rules. Somebody, I'm not going to say any of the numbers, but they said that one of the people that was an issue at fault, they said that they had apparently revealed...
We get it. Shiloh Ross, we get it. You don't want to say the numbers. You ain't got to keep telling us you're not going to say the numbers. We get it. Keep going. And I do like your notes, by the way. Very detailed. I do appreciate that. I love me a good notepad, okay?
That something really bad had happened to their daughter. They didn't reveal any information. That would be kept confidential. And I don't know what happened, but condolences, it sounded like it was very serious. They said something bad had happened to their daughter. It's not necessarily relevant to the case, but it might be grounds for them not to be part of this jury. They went on to say that there were others, and particularly that person, they said they were concerned about giving these details in front of everybody. And I believe that this juror got into a long sidebar conversation with the judge that no one was allowed to hear, that it seemed like they were talking for about 30 minutes or so. So obviously there was a lot to that story, and the judge wanted to dig deep into that. The judge did kind of say, look, I'm going to take that into consideration, but like these jurors, they don't live in a bubble just because they've had bad stuff happen to them. Unless it's really relevant to this, I'm not just going to strike them like that. And I think the judge was being really fair. But they went on to give give one particular juror. They said this person, and this is allegedly the person that was the juror that people were saying that they were racist. I'm not going to put my opinion on it like that, but some of the things they said did sound like they were discriminatory. Without any context. Apparently, they had some responses where they had family that were in law enforcement and that they had been the victim of a crime. It didn't have, I don't believe there was their gender, so we don't know if, as far as from what I made notes on it, whether it was a male or a female. But what we do know is that they basically said that they had a specific answer that really needed exploring, and they said if that person wouldn't follow the law, actually, I can't lie, I've written here she, so it sounds like it might have been a woman, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. They actually said, I'm not going to say where, but the judge said, oh, there's somebody that was a juror that was from the same area that he was originally from. And he said, I don't see it as a problem. He just kind of pointed out, he said, oh, I was happy to see that. Like one
jury selection is be so boring because it's really nothing other than asking the same question. No matter what state you in, what type of court, they ask the same questions. But anyway, so shout out to Trap Lil Ross for that, okay? Y'all know I had to squeeze my YouTube video in here, so now I can just clip this down and put it on YouTube, okay? How do I feel about it? Well, Durk trial begins Monday, okay? It's supposed to last 2 to 3 weeks, and it's supposed to be a lot of people testifying, okay? And I ain't gonna hold you. I'm interested in knowing who's officially on the witness. I'm hearing rumors, right? And y'all know I try not to watch nobody's videos right now. Now I'll watch Trap Lil Ross right now, and I'll watch I'm Not a Lawyer But right now because they're actually in the courtroom, right? But anybody else that's just reacting like I'm trying not to watch their video. But one of my viewers did hit me up and was like, it was rumors that Alex, okay, from the Atlanta case, the victim in the Atlanta case, was supposed to be in the mix as a witness. I don't know, right? But what's interesting, I believe this is why they hit me up, is because a couple years back, me, Bezu, and Alex was on FaceTime, and I did some content clip where he basically said it wasn't nothing, the police was lying, you know, he was under anesthesia, this and that. Now, when the incident happened in Atlanta, you know, Alex got locked up in the feds, okay, and did some time. Fast forward to when him and Bezu got on that live, when he was like, you know, shout out to you because you ain't come to court or some shit, he said, right? I'll have to see if I can find a clip of that. But, you know, he had just came home, so this had to be like 2023, right? So fast forward, remember Alex caught a case in Chicago for allegedly, okay, stealing cars or whatever he was doing, and then he went back to the feds, okay? So like the last time I checked, which was maybe like last year sometime, he was still locked up. However, I haven't heard from him in a minute. Let me see, because he was on his social media. Let me see if I can see his page still. Let me see. Let me see. He ain't been posting. Unless he ain't post nothing. His page still up though. So I don't know. Like I said, that's what people saying that's coming from other creators. I'm not 100% sure. All I can say is this is my opinion about it, right? I don't know. Okay, because Alex was supposed to be like part of their crew, like friends with them. Okay, now as far as the Atlanta case, you know, they couldn't even get them on a RICO case in Atlanta based off of that. However, doesn't mean fast forward to now, if I don't know, you know. So I'm interested in finding out if he is indeed part of this case or not. But yeah, all I know is per my conversation with him, he said he ain't had nothing going on. He said he ain't say nothing to nobody. And they wasn't supposed to talk to him when he was under anesthesia and this and that. That's what he said, okay, at that time. Now, Bezu was on the phone with us, so he could have been saying that because who was on the phone? I don't know. But that's gonna be interesting. But with that being said, hey, until I make up my mind what days or if I can get out there, we're just gonna react every day. So, like I said, trial starts on Monday, and we're gonna react. to either trap Laura Rose or I'm not a lawyer, but to keep up with what's going on. But 2 to 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, that's a long time.